Today's lore story is for Aleksandr the Sharpshooter. Hey, welcome, I'm LeilaFox. Today we're going to be talking all about Aleksandr the Sharpshooter. Now what's fun with this new legendary champ is this is another collab that Raid has done with a celebrity figure. This person is from Simple, who is a Counter-Strike professional. Now with this champ, they put him in the High Elf faction, made him a legendary, and gave him kind of the name the Sharpshooter. So before we get into the lore story to see how it possibly fits with Simple, let's check out the High Elf faction lore as a whole. High Elves originate in Arabia, where they have built a wondrous, shimmering city. Living in these lands of plenty has enabled them to evolve their society to the highest degree of physical, intellectual, and spiritual achievement. High-principled, they welcome exiles and offer them new homes further east. Let's check out the lore story for Aleksandr the Sharpshooter from the Tolarian Lore Book of Champions. The man Arabia knows today as Aleksandr the Sharpshooter was not born a legend. None would have imagined the only child of humble merchants to be destined for heroic deeds, but fate had many cruel trials in store. And where hardship would have broken a lesser mortal, Aleksandr faced those challenges head-on and was forged into something far greater than he was meant to be. As a babe, he saw his family slaughtered before his very eyes by savage orc raiders who had descended upon their trade caravan like vultures. They spared none in their bloodthirsty fury, and had Aleksandr's mother not hidden him under an upturned wagon, he too would have perished by the blade. By a stroke of luck, local farmers found the trembling child amid the carnage when they investigated the attack and took him in as their own. Named Aleksandr by his foster father, the young elf spent his early years in relative peace. He learned the peasant's craft and worked the land, helping his new family make a living in the harsh winterlands of Karok. Alas, that would not last for long. The Dark Elves of Durham learned that an elven child had been adopted by humans and brought up as a peasant, an insult to their noble race. One of their cohorts invaded the farmstead and demanded the boy be surrendered to them. Otherwise, everyone's life would have been forfeit. Though it pained him greatly to abandon home, Aleksandr went with the Dark Elves willingly in exchange for sparing the peasants' lives. Thus began the most harrowing period of his life. His new masters sought to purge the taint of human weakness from him and reforge Aleksandr into a weapon to serve their will. He went through arduous, downright sadistic training until he excelled with the bow, learned to hunt and kill without remorse. The Dark Elves were canny and stoked the flames of hatred in Aleksandr's heart, directing his fury at the orcs and ogren who had deprived him of his true kin. Fortunately, those savages bred like rats, and Aleksandr had no lack of prey. He took no small amount of pleasure in honing his skill and hunting gallon-packed raiding parties. However, one final twist of fate was yet in store for the sharpshooter. A twist that took him back to the path he never thought to tread again. One night, Aleksandr cleared out an orc encampment in the forest and found a prisoner the raiders had held, a priest of Lumea. Intrigued, Aleksandr chose to free him, but he could not imagine that talking to the old man would resonate so profoundly with half-forgotten memories in his heart. After that meeting, Aleksandr fled his previous life and sought acceptance in the kingdom of the High Elves. Many adventurers and perils awaited him, but his skill and determination never wavered. The ruthless assassin was dead, and in his place, Aleksandr the Sharpshooter, captain of the Arabian Rangers and protector of the weak, was born. To this day, he keeps his vigil, ever ready to battle evil, no matter what form it takes. Alright, so this was the story for Aleksandr, and initially before I read this, I was really curious to see how they were going to add in Simple and how they were going to make him a high elf. So we kind of see that here, is that we see that he was orphaned at an early age. Orcs had invaded his family, invaded the caravans, left him orphaned, and that would also kind of explain how in the game his abilities center around specifically targeting orcs and ogren. In-game, we see Aleksandr's character model, and when we look at his A2 is an AoE decreased defense, but also has a chance of weaken against the orc and ogre tribes. Born to Win removes all buffs from the target, but also very similarly is it has something extra attributed to orcs and ogren, is that removes all buffs from the target before attacking when targeting enemies from these factions. Now what I do find interesting is, again, they found a way to tie these two abilities into the lore story, into the game. And what we find with Aleksandr is the dark elves get wind that there is an elf that's living among humans, and for them, they find that to be completely unacceptable. What I find interesting with that is dark elves essentially are exiled high elves. So for them to see something like this as going against them, I thought that was a little interesting to add in there. Pretty much give an ultimatum where Aleksandr decides to join them, and then they essentially brainwash him, I guess you could say, is they train him to be an assassin. They train him to be a killer and to specifically seek out orcs and Ogryn, knowing that that's a deep hurt that he has. Amongst his missions, he ends up in an orc encampment and ends up freeing a priest. Little did he know that talking to this priest brings back memories that he thought was long gone. Now, I would have liked if the lore maybe expanded on that a little bit. Initially, when I was reading the story, I was hoping maybe the priest knew his parents, or had been a part of the caravan, or had some way connected that would have been able to connect Aleksandr back to his past. They kind of didn't really talk about that. I think that would have been fun. But then talking to this priest, Aleksandr decides that he doesn't want to continue down this path that he has. Perhaps he thinks this is something his parents wouldn't want him to do. So then he decides to go to the High Elves. And I like how they tied that in, because like we just read with the High Elves, is it says that they take in exiles. And that's essentially kind of what happened with him, is that he ends up growing with humans, then ends up going to dark elves, going to high elves, and wanting to change his life around. So then he becomes captain of the guard. And I do like how in the end, they add captain of the Aravian Rangers and protector of the weak. I really do like that, because essentially he was just a little one himself. He was very vulnerable and somebody chose to protect him. So then it kind of comes around full circle. I would love to know what you guys think of this story for Aleksandr the Sharpshooter. I do think it's a really nice lore. I like what they did trying to tie in simple, knowing that he's a Counter-Strike professional and a sniper, so they made Aleksandr the Sharpshooter a sniper as well. Leave me some comments down below. Let me know what you think of this lore story for Aleksandr the Sharpshooter. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, check out some more videos up here in the playlist on the top right.